Hello, and welcome to episode 96 of the Wine Educate podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Close, and today we are talking about how to decode your champagne wine label. There's a lot that's on that champagne wine label, but it's really useful once you know what all the things are trying to tell you. We're going to go through them one by one. Certainly, there'll be some things that I may leave off, but I'm going to be talking about the things that are most relevant, especially today. What is the champagne label trying to tell you? First off, it's going to let you know what the sweetness level is, which is wonderful because I find some folks really shy away from certain categories of wine, in particular like Riesling, because they don't know how sweet or dry it's going to be. It used to be that champagne was a lot sweeter than it is today. It's one of those fashion things. Back in the day, people liked their bubbles to be really quite sweet, but today we like a drier style. There's some terminology that will let you know what grapes are in the blend. Sourcing, so where the grapes are from that are used in that particular champagne, and also producer type, meaning is it a grower champagne? Is it from a co-op? And so on and so forth. By the end of this little mini lesson, I will give you the tools to be able to decipher your bottle. If you have your champagne bottle in front of you, you may also need to have your glasses handy if you are like me and can't see very well these days, or even perhaps a magnifying glass. And I'm serious because some of these things are very small on these labels. So starting with the very basic, and that is the producer name. This is usually featured quite prominently on the label itself. I also have this on YouTube where I have the slides. And I too am just a big podcast listener, but if you could follow along on the slides with this one, I think it's really quite helpful because I'm showing many different labels and showing exactly where on the labels you can find these things. We're looking at a label of Paul Bara, gorgeous champagne, and the name is featured really nice and prominent. There's something else to look for on the bottle that will give you a big clue as to what kind of producer this is. These are very tiny capital letters of either NM, RM, RC, or CM. There's some others. I'm not going to mention them because they're pretty minor players, and I think you've got enough to work with these guys, okay? Now is when you start your Easter egg hunt and try to find these letters on the bottle. Sometimes they're on the front, on the bottom part where the address is, and it's just the two letters followed by some numbers. Sometimes they're on the back label. Hunt around and find them, and let's see what they actually mean. Okay, NM means négociant manipulant. And these producers make up the majority of the champagne that is produced. Champagne has a rich history of having these large houses that buy in grapes from growers. They may own some of their own vines, but they're predominantly buying in most of their grapes from other growers. They do not own this land. These are the big houses. So you have houses like Veuve Clicquot, Moet Chandon, and this is how they operate. And because of this, you will find this NM on their label. Quite the opposite of that, we have RM, which is Relicant Manipulant. And these are the growers that grow all their own grapes and make their own champagne. They are a self-sustained unit. They're doing everything themselves. Obviously, smaller production, more of a boutique operation. I am not going to say that one is better than the other, okay? Because I will not turn either one of them down. But I just want you to know the difference between the two so you can know where these grapes are coming from for these champagnes. Now we have RC and CM, and these are the cooperative models. The RC is a grower that sells wine under its own label. We don't see a whole lot of these in the States. Remember last week I said that the French drink about 50% of the champagne that's produced. They get to drink a lot of these. So if you get a chance to go to France, I would try to seek out some of these fun growers that may not make enough to export. The CM is a cooperative that sells under its own brand. And this we do see here in the States and in other export markets, mainly for the big one that you can recognize. That's Nicolas Fouillat, that blue label. These guys are operating under the cooperative model, meaning they're buying grapes from other folks, but they're making the wine under the one label within the co-op. And that's the CM on the labels. There you go. So now you're going to be one of those people that whenever you get your hands on a bottle of champagne, you hunt around for these two little letters to let you know how the grapes were sourced to make these champagnes. Dosage. All right. Sweetness levels. As I mentioned, most champagnes these days are on the drier side. That is the fashion of the day. And the word that you all recognize is the word Brut. This indicates a drier style. Now, as the pendulum sort of swings to being even drier, there's some other categories that have been introduced here. So Brut Nature and Brut Zero are really dry. This means that they did not add a dosage in at that point of any sweetness level. And we have champagnes here that are 0 to 3 grams per liter of residual sugar, which is really low. There's also extra Brut, that's 0 to 6 grams per liter, so possibly a little more residual sugar. But Brut doesn't go any higher than 12 grams per liter. This is the one we see most often. But I will say that within Brut, this can vary. So you could get a Brut that is pushing way up against 12 grams per liter, and you may sense that a bit as being a little more fruity because of that residual sugar that was added at the dosage. At the very sweetest level, we have Doux, which is 50 plus grams per liter of residual sugar. I cannot remember the last time I've seen one for sale, let alone tasted one. These are considered to be dessert champagnes, which I'm sure they're absolutely delicious, really great with dessert. They're just not a lot of them made these days because they've fallen out of fashion. Here's an example of two labels. One says Brut Nature, the other one says Brut Zero. Wines that are Brut make up about 90% of the bottles that are produced now in champagne. It is really the lion's share and typically what you will see in the shops. Okay, a little word again on non-vintage. So I prefer the term multi-vintage. Non-vintage kind of makes it seem like it's not special, but it is special. This is a really careful blend that someone worked very hard to perfect and keep consistent year after year being the house style. And non-vintage is hugely important for the champagne industry. It represents about 75 to 80% of all the champagne that's made. It's very important. Vintage champagne is wine from a single harvest year, and it's only declared in really great years. Vintage champagne is more expensive, primarily because there's just not a whole lot of it to go around. Premier Cru and Grand Cru. These are going to be listed on the labels, and it means that the fruit is from these specific areas that were designated to be either Premier Cru or Grand Cru. We have 42 villages that are Premier Cru and 17 for Grand Cru, and these are recognized as premium sites that make better grapes and therefore better sparkling wines. Oh, I love this one. So fun. Okay, this lovely term, Blanc de Blanc, tells you that this champagne was made from just Chardonnay. Technically, only from white grapes. There are some other white grapes here besides Chardonnay, but in reality, it's mainly Chardonnay. And we have Blanc de Noir, meaning white from black, and these can be made from Pinot Noir and or Pinot Meunier. And prominently listed on the label as Blanc de Noir. Rosé champagne. Who doesn't love rosé champagne? The funny thing about rosé champagne is that it's made in a way that is pretty much banned everywhere else in the European Union. At the dosage, they are adding in 8 to 20% of red Pinot Noir to make it pink. Normally, your rosé would be made using Saignée or direct press. But here the rosé is made with actually adding in the red wine. And the word rosé obviously will be listed on the label. There are some other special bottlings here. I won't go into too much detail, but these are really fun bottles. Prestige Cuvée, these are the top parcels and have been aged for a long time before release. Special Club, this one is fascinating, and I could do a whole podcast just on this. These are grower champagnes, and they are peer reviewed. So their peers have to approve these as being Special Club. And then late Disgorged, and these are single vineyard expressions. So now you can go out into the world and do your shopping and navigate the wine list, knowing some of these champagne terms. I hope you have found this to be helpful. I'm about to send out the newsletter. When I do, I'm including the champagne multiple choice quiz. So make sure you are on the newsletter. If you haven't signed up already, go to wineeducate.com and you'll see the green newsletter sign up button at the top. Next week, we are talking about Cava. We're moving away from France, sadly, but going to a wonderful place. Cava is so interesting. The history of Cava, some of their indigenous grapes. I'll be getting into all of that next week. Thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again next time.